Welcome to Improv Your Parenting, the art of turning parenting into play. Today we're joined by Crystal Haralambou, an experienced theater artist and educator with over 25 years in performance and improvisation. She has taught and facilitated students of all ages in both public and private settings, blending traditional improv training with deep experience in applied improvisation trained by leading institutions. Crystal uses improv as a tool to build communication, creativity, and connection. She founded and directed an improv comedy training program in theater space in Tampa Bay for 11 years, and has now pivoted her focus to applied improv in both educational and modern workplace settings, including companies, local universities, and nonprofit organizations. She supports teams in developing collaboration, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. This cross-context experience really strengthens her work with students, showing just how relevant and necessary these skills are today. Her teaching helps kids grow in confidence, strengthen social skills, and learn to engage with curiosity and courage. For Crystal, the real joy is watching students discover what's possible when they have to play and express themselves. Crystal, thanks for joining today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm going to start with the same question I do every time, is how do you interact with kids? And what role does improv play in those interactions?
Currently, I interact with kids in a school setting, in a private school here in Tampa Bay. It is a specialty school in that we often cater to students that have ADHD, high anxiety, or dyslexia. I get to be the theater teacher and bring in improvisation. Right now, I'm working with 7th and 8th graders. We're using it as an elective class, and it's really been a great way to hone in on some social skills, just really getting them to see it's fun to perform, and they definitely have gravitated towards that. This is something that can help them with so many other things. And we start with the next big thing for them, which is their high school interview. We start to talk about that. We start to talk about how this crosses over into so many other areas, how to look people in the eye, how to shake hands, how to do the things that show strong communication and strong confidence. So that's where my mindset is right now when I'm working with kids. But I've had a long history of working with theater kids and using improv in the past. For over 25 years, I've had a chance to really take improv into the playmaking process. So that's been a strong focus before I honed my own skills. And it's really cool. It's cool to see kids build plays using improv instead of just sitting at a typewriter. So
it seems like it'd be a lot more fun that way.
yeah, it is. It is fun. I think that it gets the juices flowing, obviously just being on your feet and getting the energy out, and for them to use empathy and imagine what it would be like to be in that setting. So I think there's a lot there when it comes to playmaking. But even like I said, the hyper focus now has not even been that. It's been more. That's not true. Actually, with the younger grades, I do work with them on the playmaking process, and we use improvisation daily. But when I'm teaching the skill of improv, it's mostly the older students.
And so you brought up a good point right there at the end, although there's a lot of things I wanted to touch on with everything else you said. But the difference between play and skills that I thought was key to dive into is when you're working with the younger kids, it sounds like it's more about skills or play. I'm sorry. It's more about play. And then with the older kids, it's more about skills and how do you get those skills through the play, right? Is that?
Yeah, I think, play is the method for us to get to both of them. So whether we're getting to the script, which was, I guess, first honed by Second City, or however they used improv to get to a script, that's how we're doing it with the younger grades. I'm doing it with the younger grades. 3rd through 6th grade, each class writes their own play. So we're going through the story spine. We're working on each portion of that, how to build out a story, what happens in each part, and then how to get on your feet and play it out. Let's just see, okay, well, what if we introduce this? What happens if we put them in a different setting? All of the different things that come along with improv. So we're using play to get to that final product.
Oh, cool.
In the older kids, I'm using play to win them over. Like soft skills and such are going to come later, but I want to set the framework for them at the beginning. Like there's purpose to this. This is going to be fun, but please know these are things that I use throughout my whole life. These are things that you can use throughout your whole life. Yeah. And I try to even touch on certain parts of their timeline where they could start to integrate that. So I even say, like when you go to college, there's so many new things, there's unknown things that you're not going to know about, and you're going to be able to use these tools there. The very first time you meet someone in an interview, they're looking, they're reading your body language, they're doing all the things, and you're listening and looking too. You're trying to figure out, do you want to actually work for these people? Showing that, but then even like day-to-day stuff where I talk about when we focus on the relationship in an improv scene, we have real relationships in our lives that we have to focus on. And so I try to translate some of that for them there. But even like when you're at a wedding and your parents say, this is my child, how do you respond? How do you respond without just hiding behind your parent? And so I think those communication skills that I want them to leave with are set up for them, but the play is the focus. I mean, that is what they want to do. That.
Exactly. That's the meat on the hook, I guess.
Yeah,
Totally.
exactly.
And you said you work a lot with kids with ADHD, anxiety, dyslexia. And I imagine there's a range here. How do they interact with the introduction of this as a thing that they're going to do? And then how do they greet and accommodate that?
I think it's different for each child, obviously, but I've had different reactions. I've had kids, and this is true for the younger grades too, where they'll come in to the setting and it's a pretty small nurturing setting, but they're like adamantly opposed. I mean, tears even sometimes were like, I do not want to be on stage. And so it is like winning them over in some ways at that stage where I have to show them like, this is safe. This is just in front of your friends. And then even sometimes just get them to use the stage to get all together. Obviously, they're all together, collaboratively working, but getting them on there so they're not as afraid of it. I think for the older kids, I get different views. First of all, when you get into middle school, there's so much judgment that comes along. So I think for them, sometimes I've got the kid that's so cool and can't do it because they're just too cool. And then I have, obviously the kid that wants to make everyone laugh. And then another child that's just sort of reading the room, trying to figure out what am I supposed to do in this situation. And then some that haven't learned to read the room yet. And so we're really coming at it from different angles. But I feel like improv is democratic in that way, that it really is a place for everyone. And wherever you're at on that learning curve, you can really approach it and get something out of it. I'm sure everyone listening would agree. It really is what about your own personal learning journey and what is it that you're needing in this moment? And can you take something from it? So we do process after each exercise a little bit because I know they want to get back to the game.
Don't waste my time on this talking thing.
Yeah, I think to answer your question though, it really is. It takes my improv skills to go, what's happening with this child right now? What's going on in their world that they're either afraid or can't wait to be on stage or whatever it may be. So I think that's interesting. I will say when they first hired me at this school, and this was about 16 years ago, I remember thinking, you want me to put anxious kids on stage?
Right.
I was like shocked by that because I was like, oh, wow, okay, I'm up for the challenge, but that's really hard.
Yeah.
And I think I had always, as an educator, dealt with some of that, but I was like, highly anxious children. I think that I realized that we're all anxious in some ways, especially post-COVID. And I think that it's a little bit about exposure therapy, right? Where you just keep doing it, keep trying it and take it in these little bite-sized steps, but also just recognizing the fear, calling it out, and then talking about it, getting through it so that you can maybe try something that feels slightly outside your comfort zone and then push yourself beyond that. So,
and that's something that I would find fascinating is the differences or similarities, if you will, between doing improv with adults and doing improv with kids. Like, how do they differ or how are they similar in ways that might have surprised you?
Oh man, that's such a loaded question. I love, especially with the younger students, they're not inhibited. Their imagination is often way more intact than mine, so they can get there quicker. Their sense of wonder or play is all being exercised on the daily. And so for adults, it takes work to get back to that place, to like actually allow yourself to say like, I'm going to let all my guards down. I'm going to forget what I have to buy at the grocery store today, 800 tasks I have to do, the car line, etc. I think to let that go and give your mind and heart space to play, that's way harder for adults. But something that surprised me with kids is, I'm teaching the mechanics of how to play a game or do an exercise, but then I feel like they understand the process quicker, they're eager to play, and then they put in so many things that I've never seen in an adult improv scene,
Yeah.
whether at a show or in a rehearsal or a class. It's like, how did you come up with that? And as adults, we're even following the pattern and we're looking for the thing that fits in the moment. And sometimes it's just like so bizarre that a child will throw in, but it works. And you're like, I want to laugh. I want to be like, wow, you're brilliant. You're a genius. You know, I also have to like compose myself and be your teacher. So I think all of those things are surprises along the way as we're doing it.
Wow. And so that's a good question. Then it leads me to, is being the teacher, is how do you sort of be in the play, but also be a little separate from it enough to still be, I'm the teacher here and I'm, we have a thing that we're doing.
Yeah, that's a tough line, but I think, maybe right or wrong after this many years of doing it, I think it's really important for kids to see their teachers play, or even this is like to any adult figure that's significant in their life, their parents, their aunts and uncles. I think it's really important for them to see like this play is urgent in some ways. Like we need play in our lives, and it's not a kid thing. It's just a kid thing. It's a life thing. And I think it's really important to model that for kids. I think it's really important for there to be moments where we do let our guard down as the authoritative person in the room or the person just holding the boundaries, but just to show like I'm a human being too, and I can come alongside you and play alongside you, and we can create together. It doesn't matter the age, we can co-create together. That's really cool. So I probably push that a little bit more in my classes than maybe other teachers. I don't know. We have a very lovely setting at our school. The environment is often for getting up on your feet and doing. So I do appreciate that a lot. And I have not always been in a school setting like that. But for me, particularly, I'm in there playing with them first, especially if it's just more of a brain warm up or physical warm up. And then when it comes to stage time, I will model for them the first example if I think it's not going to inhibit them, because I don't want to set up something for them where they're like, oh, now I have to copy what Miss H did or whatever.
Yeah.
I want to just model it for 30 seconds to 45 seconds and then say, now it's your turn. And so I do show that, like, I'll play characters very easily. I'll jump up on stage. I'll have them obviously as my partners. And I think that is where I can sort of let the teacher persona fall by the side. And I have taught them already how to be a respectful audience member, good audience member, supportive audience member, all of those things. So oftentimes it works, even for those 45 seconons. They don't go mad and start just jumping around or whatever. They're captivated, they're engaged. And then as soon as I'm off stage, they're like, I want to go. Those anxious kids, which is amazing because you're like, I love that. Like, what happened? What switched in you that you're ready to go, So
yeah, gosh, it sounds like you have some secret ability to inspire, or maybe it's not a secret. Do you know what it is? Like, how do you get them to be like, I want this, I want to be in on this?
Gosh, I don't know if I know exactly the words, but I think it's that same thing that we felt when we were in our first improv experience. I think there's something in you as a human that just is ignited because you're like, I am a creative being. And it doesn't matter if you're an accountant. It doesn't matter if you're a lawyer. There's something made in us that is creative. And so when you're in a setting like that, and maybe for other people, it could be an art class or a music class. For me, it was improv. Even though I studied theater for years before that, it was like that first improv class that was like, oh my gosh, this is it, like I'm on fire. There's something in me that's alive, like really alive. And I love this. I love the fact that I'm not doing it alone. I love that I get to try stuff and fail, and it's low risk. Like, that's going to go away in a few seconds. No one's going to know. You're just trying stuff out. You're creating. And then sometimes you create and you're surprised by it. You're like, what did that even come about? Like, who knew that was inside of me? And I think that kids get a taste of that. So, and even adults in the first improv class, they get a taste of it. Gosh, life is good. I followed all my plans or successes, or maybe I didn't, and it didn't come out the way I wanted. But something about that first experience resonates in us, right? And it says not only that we are made for something creative, but that there is something special, holy even, if you want to say, in that moment where you feel like this feels life-giving. This feels full of, I don't know, just an awakening in some ways. So I think kids get a taste of that. And not that they feel like their lives are mundane, because I don't think they are. I think kids have full lives, but there's something that triggers in that creative setting that they go like, yeah, I want to keep this part. Like, I like this part.
Yeah. Did you have improv as a kid when you were growing up, or is it something you came to later?
I did some theater stuff when I was a kid. I took dance classes and then I did musical theater, but I really wasn't introduced to improvisation until high school. And in high school, I went to a magnet school for the arts in Jacksonville. And I remember learning a little bit about improv, not very much. It wasn't a high focus. It was just enough to like use as a tool, maybe in rehearsal, like put your script aside, let's just improvise this scene. And then when I went to college, again, no major focus. It was, which surprised me because I studied theater. So you'd think of a huge wing of it, especially now that I know how applicable it is in the world. But it was, I had one class with a professor named Jeff Norton, and he was just like, it was a lot of that woo-woo stuff. It was a lot of like touchy-feely, like go walk around campus and see what you notice and be and like that kind of stuff. But it was still lovely. And so then I think within that time, I eventually visited SAC Comedy Lab in Orlando. And I still think they do some of the best short form improv around. And I had seen their shows and I was like, I think I want to try that. And I remember being terrified because I studied traditional theater. So it's like I knew what to do with the script, but I didn't really know what to do without a script. And so then I post-college pursued that. I went there every single week, sometimes twice a week. So I was commuting about an hour and a half each way. And yeah, got the bug then. So for me, that's when I definitely got it. So
awesome. Wow. So that brings me to, you had mentioned before about how kids kind of come to this a little more naturally. They already know how to play. They're sort of creative every day anyway. And adults kind of, it takes a little bit more to get them out and have them be open to this space. And have you, or do you get to work with adults to help them interact with kids in a more playful way?
It is something I've been thinking about a lot. I want to say, well, I did run an improv theater for a little bit, and we ran once a semester a class that was parents and kids.
Oh, nice.
So it wasn't like an ongoing. It was just like, let's try this. Come with your child on a Saturday and we're going to do improv. And it was just like something that I was sort of interested in at the time. I've since seen a lot of people partner that together. And I do think there's a huge curiosity of just like, how can you approach parenting? It seems hard, especially through the different ages and stages. You have different things coming up with your child. And so I think there's something there, even just if you think of the family unit as a team.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, for me, I was one of 4. So I think that we could have probably used some collaborative training.
How do we make this work?
Yeah, even just support. Like, how do we support each other? How do we support our siblings? But yeah, it's definitely a big curiosity for me. I have not done extensive work with just parents and kids, but I feel like that it's a worthy pursuit, especially just when they start to get into the preteen dynamics there. I think you could have absolutely believe in improv so much that I feel like if you've introduced it to your kids when they were young, then you can continue to use some of these tools as they get older in different ways and just differentiate it for that age. And especially like, gosh, I just remember there being so many weird dynamics in 6th grade for me, like with girls and stuff. I wasn't ready for it. I remember that. But now looking back, gosh, I wonder if there was ways that I could have role played with my parent or anything that would have gotten me prepared for the moments that I wasn't really expecting with my friends or not friends, right? So I really do believe in the power of improv in the sense of like even having seen it applied to all these other settings, whether it's the workplace or corporations or even I was just at the university last week doing it with some honors students, So I'm seeing it cross over into so many ways. And then I'm mind blown about how other people are using it, like in the medical field and in warfare and all these other places. You're
Yes.
like, wow, in the world. But like I said, I believe in it so much that I feel like it's a huge access point for parents. I feel like parents that are willing to try to get back to a place of play, to try to explore something creative with their child, I feel like it's a huge plethora of tools that they could use, and also maybe discover just some real fun between them and their child, because not that that doesn't exist already. I'm sure it does. Instead of going to Universal or Disney World, I mean, you probably could create something really fun and meaningful for your child. And then when they look back, that's some of what they remember too. So.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm thinking too, in terms of like the educational setting, I would imagine there's other teachers at your school who may not have had theater or improv experience, but yet could use some of these skills in their classrooms.
Oh,
do you ever get to work with them and be like, hey, a cool way to teach history might be play it?
Yes, I've been lucky enough for the last 2 years to do professional development training with our teachers. I'll say last year was pretty intense. And then this was a full session. And then this year I sprinkled in stuff during pre-planning for the school year. And oh my gosh, certainly it crosses over to some subjects very like English or writing, literature, all of that. Yeah. But also for our kids, we develop lots of things where they're like getting brain breaks throughout the day. They have to like get up and dance, or they have to get up and do an activity. They have to go find a partner and do this quick activity. And so for me, improv is a huge access right there. I've taught a lot of brain breaks for our teachers, but also I've taught certain exercises and then I've said to them, because they're experts in their own field, now, how would you use this to learn the presidents, or how would you use this to remember the characters that were in this story, or whatever it may be. We do it in a fun way, and then they can expand on that. And so I also encourage them, do the fun way, not that the other ways aren't fun, do the fun way first, or the way that's like just about their lives or relatable to them. And then once they've learned that exercise, now come back to it and use it with fractions or whatever the thing is that you're playing with at the time, so that it sticks. And I think everyone knows, like, even I'm sure we can all sing songs from when we were in grade school, right? Because it stuck. And I think that it does. Once you're on your feet, moving and incorporating both the brain and the body and your voice, sometimes all of the elements are going to make it stick better. So I love that. I think if teachers just like AI is coming, we have to open our mind to all the new technologies of the world. Be open to the creative tools that are out there, because it can really kickstart your year. It can make you have a different perspective on the same curriculum that you've maybe been teaching for a while, how to like just engage differently with kids.
Totally. So. Yeah. And I just remember too, from my school experiences, the teachers I liked were the ones that made me do things, not just sit there and listen. Yeah. And when you're working with the kids in your class, are there tools that you use, I guess, one, to just encourage them to get out, participate if they're a little hesitant or anxious? And then two, are there ways that you are able to maintain safety while still encouraging play and exploration and kind of open and fun while you're doing it?
Yeah. In the school setting, it's different than like a studio setting, for sure. Some of the things cross over just because you're working with an age group. But I would say things like, I definitely teach audience etiquette 1 early on. I talk about just stage dynamics 2, also like how do we respect the stage, how do we treat it, those kinds of things. And then we spend a good portion of the beginning of any session, I'll say, like, if it's a 9-week session or 18-week session, we're spending a good chunk of it just on like nonverbal communication and pantomime, and how to like communicate using our face, our body language. All of that's happening early on. So I try to reiterate that in the class. So like, I'll say yesterday I saw a student put their head down, and I was like, I don't want to say his name, but I'll just say, like, let's show respect. Let's sit up. Let's watch what's going on, even when it's not your turn. So I'm reiterating that throughout. I try to, if something is said off the cuff, that's, you know how kids are. Let's try that again. Let's see if we can be supportive and say that differently. If they're being, if they're feeling more shy or not as risk taking, or they're just introverted and quieter, so they'll sit in the back and just hopefully not get noticed or whatever.
Yeah.
I often will say, like, I'm really looking for bravery today. I know it's just like one easy step to try this out. I'm looking for someone who's really feeling brave today. And I'll try to go from that angle, or courage. I'm not going to make any child do something they don't want to do, but I am going to push that idea. Like, it's always good to try something new, something that's a little bit not comfortable, because that's how we grow. So it's kind of that mindset versus like, let's not just stay stuck in who we've been, let's keep growing.
Mm-hmm.
So there are definitely like the mechanics of the classroom that are sort of set up that reinforce all of those things as well. So I think a student did something the other day and I was like, let's make sure we're appropriate for school. Throw that phrase out,
Sure.
Which I know that's very teacher talk, but then they're like, then all the other kids laugh and then we're back on track,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that because, I mean, there's definitely we're working in a frame here,
Yeah.
but anything in this frame is cool. Let's play in that space. And so when you're thinking about, because you said your school works particularly with this community, dyslexic, anxious, ADHD, is there anything different that you do with this community that is new, surprising, or like, oh, I found that this is effective, that would be useful to share?
Yeah, I think I probably would say any teacher would agree with you, but about maybe reinforcing a visual with the actual verbiage that you're giving to students.
Mhm.
We would say that for any other subject, but for some reason with improv, we're like, all right, everyone, let's get up and do blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
I think that I've learned more and more that the more I can provide a visual, the more it's going to like stick faster. And then we can build upon it. So that feels like a very obvious thing, but I just would say, even if you're working, if you're working on something as a skill set, let's say even the parents are working on active listening. That's a good one, right? So if you're working on active listening, instead of just sitting down and talking it through, what are some actual visual cues or visual aids that you can do while you're reinforcing how to be a good listener? That's taking it back to the parent level, but I would say for every educator, anyone that's training someone on improv skills, I think that's helpful. For us, we hone in on a couple of things. One in particular that's really strong for our entire school is executive functioning. There's even classes where students in the upper division are actually learning the language so that they can see what their strengths and weaknesses are when it comes to executive functioning, and also work on those skills. And they're starting to use the language more and more. For the lower division, it's more amongst the teachers and the parents that we're using that language, but it's being integrated into the processes that we're teaching. So if it's like an improv game that I'm particularly working on, I might point out, especially for the older kids, like, this is going to be working on, okay, we have to talk about time management on this one, because you only have this many seconds to work on this, like in the first portion of the game. You have to switch and I'll let you know when your time is up. So, or we're running out of time, you have to wrap up the scene, we've got 10 seconds left. So like something like that is integrated into the actual process. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And I'm wondering if there are any exercises or games or activities you do that do focus on executive functioning, as we're going to be flexing this space here.
Yeah, there's a bunch that I feel like you could probably defend a lot of improv games that would support executive functions, but I would say, like, for task initiation is a big one, because you have to go on stage and start something out of nothing.
It's hard.
Or one suggestion, right?
Yeah.
So you can't dilly-dally. You have no time to waste. Let's talk about like a regular, a circle game, like a zip, zap, zop, or a whoosh game. In that, you don't have a lot of think time. So we do plan that. In other classes, we'll say, today we're going to talk about this. Take 30 seconds of think time and imagine what that might be like. Now, I might do that at the beginning of class, but when it comes to the exercise itself, it's not going to have think time. It's get on your feet, let's go. It's task initiation. And then the other student that's coming in is having to observe, without being in the scene yet, what's happening. They have to see, observe whatever it is, and then ask themselves, how can I contribute to this?
Mhm.
So it slows down a little bit from that perspective, but then they have to go in and contribute. And yes, and right. I mean, I know there's so much controversy around yes, and, but for me, it's like such a great tool, especially for that fearful student, because it's taking a step of faith, right? You have to walk out and trust your partner, trust that something is there for you to create. But also working memory is a big one, because you're going to have like characters that may come back, or you have to remember the names of your partner's characters. Where did they place that table when it came to their pantomime, so I don't walk right through it and destroy what they created?
Yeah.
What was the suggestion that the audience gave us? There's just a lot of things happening that they're having to hold all onto for a quick scene.
Yeah.
And so I think that's pretty cool. Can I share real quick about something that happened the other day?
Totally. Yeah.
We were playing, so when I learned the game, it was called Hitchhiker, but now it's been modified. I think Carload of Emotions. I was teaching that game because I wanted the students to start to see that character can be mirrored, right?
Mhm.
And I was teaching the game to the students. And if you don't know the game, the way it works is that there's 3 people in a car, and a new rider comes up to the car and gets in. And when they come in, they have a characteristic. And that characteristic has to be very clear. It has to be portrayed super clear. And what I say in that moment is commit 150%, like give it your all, so that the other students don't have to ask questions. They just know what you're bringing into the car. And the other students have to observe that and mirror it. Now, as I was teaching this, I was like, wow, this is higher order thinking. I'm making them do a lot of things in this game. And we've obviously built a nice rapport with each other for the last, I want to say 5 weeks working together. And so I was like, first of all, I'm asking them to change their mindset. So like typically in a scene, you want to go, oh, I see you're angry, or gosh, you must be having a bad day. You're starting to engage from a scene perspective, but that doesn't happen in this game. No. You have to go, what do I see and observe? Then how do I portray that thing? How do I make this my own thing for my own reason to be sad or angry or whatever the person brought into the car?
Uh-huh.
And do I want to play a character and do it from that perspective? And then the next thing is also like still maintaining the pantomime of the car and interacting with my other fellow actors on stage. It's just like a lot of things to be doing. I remember teaching the game the other day, and I was just like, gosh, Crystal, you're asking a lot of these kids, but you're nailing it. I think that I'm like myself cracking up, and I'm trying to like still keep teacher mode, but also like that is brilliant. And I just was really impressed by that. And I think that, like you asked earlier, you were asking about the difference between adults and kids. It's just that group of kids particularly was not inhibited. They were ready to play. They had that mindset of like, the goal today is to play. It's not about getting it right. And the truth is, I think if we can embrace that perspective, then it's a win-win in the end, because if you're willing to play, it's contagious. The other people are willing to play. We're all like sort of having a great time. And then it never felt like class. It never really felt like we were learning anything. We were learning a ton, but it's just like, it was also just like so fun. And I had a kid the other day go, it was like early in the morning before I had him. And he's like, I have you today. And I was like, I have you today. Like,
We're both lucky.
We're like pumped up. We're excited for class. I mean,
Wow.
I don't know anyone that does that in a corporate setting. I have a meeting with you today.
I know, right? Usually not that way.
I can't wait to talk numbers with you today.
Yeah, God, that sounds so awesome. And I'm jealous of your job, honestly. It sounds like such a great job. What would you do for adults then who have been away from play for so long to help them come back to it?
That's a good question. I think, I'll be honest. So even myself, I have to make room for play. Life gets hectic, right? And so I do feel like you have to set time aside, and maybe like any habit, you have to build it. It does feel like something. So a lot of adults will think, oh, that's something I did when I was a kid or whatever. But I think, like I said earlier, like it's so life-giving that if you value living life to the fullest, then I think what you have to do is have these little micro moments of creativity. Start with that, just like I was telling a friend about, I think James Clear says something about a story of a guy who he drives to the gym, gets on the treadmill for like 3 minutes and then drives home, or something along those lines. I may be retelling it wrong.
Okay.
At the beginning of the habit, because he just has to show up.
Yeah.
I don't know, that struck me, because most people will be like, what's the point? You're going to do that for a month, for the first 30 days, he does this or whatever, just to build the habit. And I was like, no, wow, that's amazing. Like, to even give yourself permission not to really work out, just like get on the treadmill for 2 minutes. And I think that if you value living life to the fullest, then you have to find these little moments where you can build that habit. So whether it's like the first 2 minutes of your day before anyone gets out of bed, you grab a pencil and a paper and you start drawing or something, or close the doors, put on your favorite song, or put on your headphones and just rock it out.
Yeah.
Rock it out. I think that has to start. You have to make time for it. And it feels silly and like, oh, whatever, 2 minutes, I could do that, but I'm not gonna. I think you have to practice doing the showing up part to allow yourself permission to play. Say yes and to yourself. And especially parents too, because I get it. Like I somewhat get it. I'm not a parent, but I see it. So I get it enough to see that like parents are exhausted sometimes, and they're going. And I think you're still a person. You're still a human that needs to feed your soul. And so make that a practice. And I think if you start with the 1 or 2 minutes, then timeline, okay, in 30 days, if that's what it takes, or in 2 weeks, I'm bumping it up a minute or whatever, and continue to build that habit. And then if it's something that you're looking for to build with your child, you could do the same thing. You could say, oh, we've got a full day ahead of us. It's a Monday. All right, we have 1 minute of fun. What can we do? Or 5 minutes of fun, you decide what we do. Or, start to build that in. So despite whatever your child did wrong that day or whatever you did wrong, it doesn't matter. Those 5 minutes are reserved. It's from 5 o'clock to 5:05. We're going to do something fun. So I think that's really important. And it also teaches your child, like, it's okay to make time for fun. It's okay to make time for play.
Wouldn't that be a good thing to learn? Yeah. And I guess too is, what would you say to sort of a new teacher coming in, and maybe like a new English teacher, history or science, so not somebody focused on the creative arts as much? What would you say to them, or how would you help them realize play can be part of the classroom?
Oh, I would say, what would make this lesson the most fun for you? Like, what would make it the most fun? Like, just think about that for a second, and then do that. Do whatever is, like they say in improv, follow the fun. Okay. Yeah. So I know that you can't always do, because you have something, you have a goal. You want them to learn whatever the parts of a cell by the end of class or the end of the next 3 classes. And so, okay, then what would make it the most fun if you can think of that? And then I think teachers would push back and be like, girl, I don't have time for that.
Right? Yeah.
And that's fine. I think that's fine. I would say, again, pick one activity that would make it the most fun for that day and do it that day. And then, give yourself a break, teach all the things you have to teach. And then by day 3, when they're back in your class again, make it the most fun again. Figure out a way. If it means them getting up and acting it out, if it means them drawing a huge model of it on butcher paper or whatever it could be, so that it sticks, because you do need that to stick, so that for whatever reason, they'll need that information on parts of a cell, but whatever. I think that, because otherwise, what are we doing if we're not having fun? I think that's really important. And I would also say to that new teacher, it's likely you could get burnt out at some point, even after your first year. So build time for yourself. Again, same thing like with the parent. Take some time, because it is that theory. So in improv, we say, put on one theory of improv, I'll say, is to like figure yourself out, like what character or who am I going into this scene? And so it's like the metaphor of like, what do they say? Put on your mask, like if the plane, you have to put on your mask before you put on the mask of your child. It's that picture. And I think that if you are just depleted as a parent or an educator, you don't have much to offer. And so you have to go back to getting refilled up, or that's not the right word, but like you got to go back to a place where you're full to offer them something. Nobody really should have to work from that position, but I get it that the world is cruel, and sometimes we just are forced into a position where we're working nonstop or have 2 jobs or whatever it may be. But I do think you have to honor that in you so much that you love your child enough that you're willing to take a few minutes to refill, or a few minutes for creativity, or you love your students so much that you do that too.
I think that's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Taking care of yourself allows you to take care of them. Yeah. And it's fascinating because that seemed like advice, as you even said, for teachers and parents and anyone else who works with, honestly, kids or adults. Really, is like you got to take care of yourself in order to also be able to interact in a world that requires you to do a lot.
Yeah, I think play also it takes you out of the brain mindset of all the to do
Yeah.
and the judgment. I remember being at a orientation at IO once, and they were like, I think the first one, they had like a panel of people in the front, and they were saying, the next few weeks are going to be pretty intense for you, but you have to tuck away that judgmental middle schooler in your brain. No offense to middle schoolers, because I do love you guys, but I was like, yes, like play does not leave room for that. So if you're judging the exercise, you're judging yourself. If you're judging all the things you have to do later, then you are not here. You're not present. You're not able to play. And it takes work as adults to get back to that point. For kids, it's much easier. It's much
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the guidance as well is, how could you make this the most fun? And wouldn't it be beautiful if all of us just sort of greeted whatever we were doing as, how can I make this the most fun? Whatever it is. I got to take a driving lesson today. How can I make that the most fun?
Gosh, I wish that, Jeremy. I wish that we could. Yeah, I have to mow the lawn. How can I make it the most fun?
Totally. Everything could be a game. How do I go through life turning everything into fun? Like, all play. Yeah. I think that's a beautiful approach and great guidance to give to anybody, particularly a new teacher, a new parent, a new person in the office, is, whatever you have to do today, how can you make it fun?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Crystal, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. I think you have some beautiful insights here. It sounds like you do a cool, amazing work that I'm very jealous about. And is there anything else you want to share with folks, or anything like that we can put out there for you?
I would just say thank you for having me. This was lovely. Every time I get to talk about improv, I feel more inspired by it too, because I just remember, oh yeah, that's where I started, and look how far it's taken me. And just to be able to see other students, whether young or old, just gravitate towards it, or see that moment where it just sparks, is really exciting for me. Yeah, I do work in other spaces. So if you're in a corporate setting or anywhere else, nonprofits, I'm happy to meet you where you're at and also talk about how improv could fit that setting. But for the parents that are listening, and educators maybe too, or anyone else that's curious about this interaction with improv and kids, I would say keep exploring it, be, curious about it. Always approach it with like you have something to learn, because I think kids have a lot to teach us about improv.
That's so true. And we're always learning throughout life. And if we are open to that, it could be a lot of fun along the way.
Yeah.
Awesome, Crystal. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, this conversation. I had a great time with you. So Thanks for that.
Thank you, Jeremy.
If you're interested in turning your parenting into play, check out the other videos at Improv Your Parenting's YouTube channel. And if you'd like to join our community, check us out on Improv Your Parenting at Substack.com. Thank you.